Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Medill this evening. We're very glad you're here to join us for our IMC panel discussion, Paths to the C-Suite. Just a little housekeeping tonight. If you have questions, please enter that at the bottom of your screen in the Q&A section. We hope to get to your questions towards the end of our program. And to start this evening, I'd like to introduce the Dean of IMC, Vijay. Are you there?
Very much here, Stacy. Thanks so much. First, a warm welcome to all of you. I hope wherever you are joining us from, you are well and safe and your family are doing well in this difficult time. I first really wanted to thank our staff. This has been a tremendous effort from them to put this event together, and so I'm really grateful. I also see in the participants list that we have our faculty joining us, we have friends of the program, current students, alumni, and we are always willing to make new friends. So a warm welcome to all of you. This is a really important event for us. And here we really want to highlight the expertise associated with marketing, communication, digital transformation. And these are all really important roles that drive growth. And at Medill IMC, we emphasize all these different functions. The C-suite folks that we have in the panel today are enjoying enormous success, but I'm really looking forward to hearing the war stories and the challenges they had to overcome to reach the C-suite. Finally, I really want to highlight the extraordinary relationship we have built with the ANA over the past year, and I'm really thankful to Neil Golden for leading this initiative. In fact, the ANA has endorsed the Medill IMC program as the only program to incorporate the ANA 12-point growth agenda in its curriculum. And we have truly established a unique partnership with the ANA. And we believe this will really unlock significant opportunities for our students, faculty, and the entire community. With that, I'm going to hand over the event to Neil Golden. And Neil, take it away.
Thanks, Vijay. Good evening to everybody. It's great to be with you. And it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to moderate this panel. And to start, I think it's probably best to just introduce the panel. So first and foremost, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Zena Arnold. She is the Chief Marketing Officer for Kimberly-Clark Corporation. She's been in the position, actually she's been with the company for about a year, but she's had extraordinary success in different roles leading up to this at different companies. And that includes Google, Kellogg, Procter & Gamble, and General Electric. My guess is everybody on the phone or everybody on the call has heard of every one of those companies. So Zena, it's a delight to have you. Thank you for joining us. Our next panelist is Melissa Brotz. She is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Abbott Labs. She's been in this role for 2.5 years, and she's actually been with Abbott for nearly 25 years. Prior to that, Melissa has a terrific agency background. She worked with Golan. She also worked with Porter Novelli. And Melissa, we can't thank you enough for all that you do, because you, in addition to leading Abbott, I know that you're also a member of the board for Medill, and you play a massive role in helping a lot of people just enjoy their life a lot better. So thank you for being here. And then last but not least is Fernando Machado. He is the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Restaurant Brands International. He's been with the company now for 5 years. I will also tell you that Fernando has a baby on the way. We don't know exactly when the baby is going to come, but Fernando has been an instrumental force for Burger King and more recently for Tim Hortons as well as Popeyes. In addition to that, Fernando has enjoyed a tremendous amount of success at Unilever. And we are fortunate to have him, as we are Melissa and Zena, on this call today. The one thing that I think is particularly important with this group is we have remarkably diverse backgrounds. In Zena's case, coming from multiple categories. Fernando, the same thing, but much more concentrated in terms of the numbers of companies with whom you've worked. And then Melissa, of course, the predominant part of her career has been with Abbott. So the twists and turns of getting to the C-suite, and not only getting there, but succeeding, are going to be really quite diverse. So Again, to everybody, thank you. I'm delighted that you're here. And with that, I just wanted to share, we prepared a number of questions. I'd like to go through a couple of the questions just to kick this off, ask each of the panelists to be able to share their perspective on this. And then, of course, as questions start coming in from the attendees, we'll be sure to take these and make sure that we get a breadth of engagement from everybody that's on the call tonight. So with that, let me begin. And I think I'm going to kick this off first to Zena. You know, you're in the Chief Marketing Officer role right now, but there must have been a point at which, after you started your career, where you said, this is the type of role that I'd like to be able to have. And I'm curious, at what point in your career did you recognize that you wanted to be a chief marketing or chief communications or chief growth officer, in your case, chief marketing officer for in your career?
Actually, Neil, it wasn't until fairly recently. So a bit on my background, I have a degree in computer science and always thought growing up I would stay in and be in tech, but I graduated around the last dot-com bubble busting in the early 2000s and had an amazing job at this wonderful company that went belly up a few weeks before I was supposed to start there. So I kind of fell into marketing and it was at GE and then at P&G. And there really the focus on marketing is in general management. So I always thought that's what I want to do is run an overall business, and marketing is great, but I want a broader role than that. And it wasn't actually until fairly recently I was at Google and in marketing for most of my career there. But the last few roles I had there, I left the marketing organization and did exactly what I thought I wanted to do, which was to be a general manager, and had some sales teams and operations and those types of things with marketing as a dotted line. And while it was a fantastic learning experience, I realized that I actually really missed marketing. And Google is a fantastic company, but I also missed being at a company where marketing was really critical to the product that you're delivering. And in tech, it's not. So I think having that experience and being in those different roles and across different companies, it really made me realize what I wanted to do, and then had this wonderful opportunity to come back to CPG and do it at a great company like Kimberly-Clark. So here I am.
That's great. Thank you. What about you, Melissa? At what point did you realize, when you started 25 years ago with Abbott, that you thought, this is a role that I'd like to have?
Well, Abbott actually didn't have a CMO until 2013. So at the time where we spun off AbbVie, which was our pharmaceutical business, our CEO at the time, Miles White, formed what is now my group, the Global Marketing and External Affairs Organization, which is comms, marketing, and sustainability and citizenship. And at that time, I became head of comms. So I just wanted to contribute as best as I possibly could from that perspective. But the more I became part of the integrated marketing team and realized that I had a lot to offer, the more I started thinking about, well, maybe I could do more. So I would say it was maybe in the 2016, 17 time frame, and I had a wonderful boss at the time. And when it came time for her to retire, I got a phone call saying, we want you to interview for the role. And so while I never really thought about it much until a year or two before I got the role, just being in the group and getting more exposed to it and seeing how I can contribute really sort of made me more interested.
That's great. Thank you. Fernando?
Yeah, so I studied mechanical engineering in school. Not many people know that. And my first job was an internship that I got at Unilever in a factory, like a laundry detergent factory back in Brazil. And that was the first time I heard the word marketing. A bunch of marketing guys came from São Paulo to the factory to present what we were planning to do for the next year. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like they have the business side, but they have the creative side. I always had that duality. in my life. Like I always like drawing, photography, and all that, and I was good with numbers. So studied mechanical engineering because of that. So that was the moment I thought that marketing would be a good thing for me, And then I was always very curious about consumers and habits and attitudes and cultures, and wanted to live abroad. And I always had CMOs that were very inspiring in Unilever. So I think it was a natural fit, and I gravitated towards wanting to be global marketing and a global CMO because of that.
That's great. That's great. So one of the questions that we have from students in particular is, the breadth of skills and experiences that are required, not only to get to this role, but to succeed. And, there's some basic ones, of course, that include, understanding the consumer and data analytics and media and creative and strategic planning. But I'm curious, above and beyond those, and this time, Melissa, I'm going to start with you. What would you say were the experiences that best prepared you to succeed in this role?
Having been at just one major company, you really get a sense of the culture. And I think when you're in an organization for a long time, you see people succeed and you see people fail. And each organization is very different. I very much fit this culture. It's a very high achieving culture. And so when I think back at the experiences that prepared me, one of the things that I truly believe is that you shouldn't stay in your lane, right? That we all see, that when we can see the big picture and share that and contribute in as many ways as possible, that really prepares you for bigger roles. And it also allows management, no matter where they sit, to see you in action. And so I think, some of the things that prepared me was I raised my hand and volunteered to do a big integrated campaign. And normally that would have gone to a traditional classical marketer. And here I am, the comms person with the comms background, kind of just a long-term Abbott person. But I raised my hand for that campaign, and I did a great job, but I also made sure that I had the skill sets on that team that would make us successful. And I think one difference between being a great team member and then being a great leader, and when CMO is a huge leadership role, is you don't have to be great at every single one of those skills. I mean, I don't even have that traditional classical marketing background, but what I did have was a good stakeholder perspective. I could think ahead. I was strategic. I knew how to get things done. And so all of those kinds of experiences, I think, made me stand out.
Great. So as much of the technical as certainly the intangibles have played a significant role. And I've seen that in evidence, by the way, both on the ANA as well as even some of the conversation I've had with you at Abbott. So that's great. Fernando, what about you?
Yeah, look, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Melissa. I think it's really important that that you understand what the other departments do, and no better way to understand that if you do it yourself, right? So in the beginning, especially in the beginning of your career, when it's easier for you to navigate different areas, I strongly recommend you do that. I came from a background from a factory at Unilever, so every time I had to do something that related to packaging or manufacturing or formulations, I would connect very easily with those guys, because I understand their world. And in Unilever, in the beginning, they put me to do a couple of months in sales. Back then, we used to have to carry a laptop and go to Walmart to take the order. It was not automated. I did a bit of finance for supply chain. So it gave me like an opportunity to see different things. And I strongly recommend, if you're in the beginning of your career, that you do that. I think that on the long run, as you become more senior, becomes more and more important that you know how to influence the organization. And I think that understanding how the other departments work and what made people tick, and like what are the issues that they face, and being empathetic with that helps. So having that foundation that you build, especially at the early stages of your career, is really important, even like later on, when you are in a C-suite and you have to influence the COO or the CFO or the CTO or whoever, because like you kind of know how it feels and what's the pressure that they have on the other side of the table.
And to each of you, just really quick, I'm curious, and then I want to get to a couple of the questions that are coming in. How many of the experiences, once you hit the marketing track, how many, or in Melissa, your case, starting with communications, how many of the experiences did you leverage outside of marketing or communications to help you prepare for success in this role? And Fernando, I'd start with you.
You mean like what other things I did beyond marketing?
Yeah, so even in the marketing role, and I see this with restaurant brands. You're pulled into multiple other disciplines.
Yeah. On the marketing role, I think it helped that I also played, even though I was in Unilever for a long time, I did lots of different product categories. I did foods, I did household cleaning, I did skincare, I did shower in different countries. I think it really helps if you have a repertoire of brands or categories or consumers or geographies, because it helps you become more creative. I knew what I liked, and I thought that I could do well what I liked, because it's always hard work, and if you're doing what you like, it doesn't feel as painful, right? I mean, it's actually fun. Sometimes I have to dial back like on the work, because it's like I enjoy what I do, and you know that, right? I mean, we try to grow the business, we try to grow the brand, and I have fun doing that, especially with the creative side of life. So I try to learn more and more and more about the things that I thought I could make the biggest impact, whether that was creative, design, work with different agencies, bringing people together, sustainability, doing the right thing. I mean, that comes a lot from Unilever. I mean, all the purposeful marketing that they do. And now that I grew up, right? I mean, that I'm like older, I try to help. And at RBI, I have the opportunity to expand my role and based on my personal interests, push the company to do certain things that in theory are outside of the role of a CMO. It's not common, like in the case of Melissa, that you have sustainability and citizenship, right, underneath the CMO. Sometimes you have, sometimes you don't. And here, I was able to help create some of that based on interest.
That's great. Hey, Zena, particularly given all the companies that you've experienced, one of the other questions I think is really helpful, and this is coming from one of our attendees, is what are some of the experiences that you brought to marketing from your previous experiences?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back about what even has prepared me for the role I'm in now, I think I got the greatest growth personally and professionally when I made a leap outside of my industry and moved from traditional CPG to tech. I think it is a different industry that's run in a completely different way, that has a lot of different baseline starting points versus where I had really grown up and spent the formative years of my career. And it was wonderful because it was a place that growth is always happening, and things are expanding in CPG, and I'm sure at Abbott and even in restaurants, it's like you're fighting to grow a few percentage points, and in tech it's like, oh, you've got to 10x everything every year. That's just the expectation. So for me, it was really, really fantastic to go and get that experience from the technical side, like to learn about the technical side of marketing and digital marketing, but then also just the overall leadership. Because things were growing so fast, it was very, very easy to go and say, here's an opportunity, and I've thought this through, and here's what I need to make it happen in terms of money and people. And because those aren't as in tight demand as they are in some other industries, it was sure, go take this and go see what you can do with it. So I think I picked up a lot from that on the broader like leadership, envisioning, and delivering skills that I'm trying to bring back. I won't say it's not challenging. It is, being in a much more resource constrained environment. But I think the ethos of being agile and really driving for change, even in more established industries and places, is how all businesses are running these days. You can't run a business and think I'm just going to keep doing the same things I used to do and make little tiny incremental improvements. So I think everyone is coming around to that, and that's what I'm trying to bring to a more traditional company.
That's great, Melissa. And I'm wondering, maybe you could just talk a little bit more about some of the overall orchestration that you've had outside of the discipline at Abbott, because that's a skill that is just extraordinary.
So, as a comms person, you are working side by side with marketing all the time, right? So I started out in our US pharma business and did PR for our product brands, but you learn a lot, right? You're shadowing, you learn a lot. You're making judgments. I think as time went on, some of the opportunities that I had were to just were very consensus oriented here. And so you really do invite the viewpoints of different functions and different people, and just being a part of anything from running a major crises, right, which I was often doing as comms head, to being part of major new initiatives like product launches for new drugs and devices. So I think I kind of look at myself and say, what are the core skill sets that someone needs? And it's really critical thinking. And I just want to do a major plug for Medill, because I believe the critical thinking skills that I learned in undergrad right there in journalism classes, are very beneficial. It helps you be strategic. It helps you critique, the common, the status quo, which is really important. The CMO job, more than anything, is about how to break out of the conventions, right? Whether they're the conventions of your category or your industry, et cetera. So I guess I could talk a lot on that, but I think I'll just stop there. But I do think critical thinking and consensus building are really pretty critical in these roles.
Terrific, thank you. So Fernando, I'm going to throw one question to you, and then what I'd like to do is I'm going to have another question for the panel, and this is coming from our attendees. So first, Fernando, just to you, how were you able to transition from your first role at a factory at Unilever into your first marketing position? And did you have to take an internship? Did you have to take a pay cut? How did that all work?
So I think that there are some companies that understand that, especially at the beginning of your career, it doesn't for some functions, it's not like a critical requirement for you to have the background. Like Unilever, I was invested, still does, like a lot in terms of building people and training people. It was a lot of training in the beginning for everyone, even if you had a marketing background. Even if I were to work in engineering, by the way, I don't think I would know how to do things. I would have to learn anyway. I think that what I've learned in college was how to structure my thinking, and because I did engineering, I think that I became fearless about anything, because that thing was complicated to pass through the exams. So in Unilever, it was not that difficult. Like I did the interviews as part of their management trainee program, which is kind of like the entry-level managerial level that they have. It was quite competitive in Brazil. Unilever is an employer of choice there. And I was able to convince the guys there with an argument that, hey, I have the numbers background, the analytical background, which is important for P&L, general management and all that. And I'm also creative, because I have this personal interest. And I think that in marketing is magic and logic. You need to have those both things. And I think that they believed, and they decided to take a chance. And they always paired me with bosses or coaches that were really good in terms of developing people. So I think that in the right company, it's not that difficult to do it. At RBI, we do that quite a lot, like especially at entry level. We take people and rotate them around and let them experience different things, and they find their passion in an area. But it's good to experiment, like we spoke about that, right? I mean, to see different things will help you on the long run. Maybe you think you want marketing, but in the end you fall in love with development. Who knows? So it's a good thing to experiment different areas. And many companies out there, it's not just Unilever, Danone is the same, P&G I think is the same. They recruit and they move you around a little bit, and they allow you to find home somewhere, and maybe it will be in marketing.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn this next question to Zena to start, and I would ask Fernando and Melissa if you could jump right in. But the question is, given that we're talking a lot about skills to get to the marketing or communications or C-suite role that you're all experiencing right now, as you look ahead to people that are aspiring to get where you are, do you envision any new skills that not only you think people are going to need to have, but also that you're likely pursuing yourself so that you can stay as current and as impactful as possible? So Zena, why don't you kick that one off?
Sure. Yes, there are always new things to be learning and doing. I think, over the past, call it 10, 15, 20 years, the world of marketing has changed a lot. Prior to that, it was, you've got your basic channels of TV, radio, out of home, print, and you just kind of have to move your little levers on all of those things. I think in a lot of traditional companies, and I've even found that coming back to Kimberly-Clark, most marketers think, well, my role is to be a general manager, and I'm going to go and kind of talk to an agency that'll do this and another person that's going to do that, and I'm just going to wear the hat of general manager and sort of make sure all the trains are on time. But what I'm trying to get my organization to pivot to is more of, I call it hands-on keyboard marketers, and that means you're really in the real-time work. So whereas before, you might brief an agency and get a plan back, and then you execute it, and 12 weeks later you see the results. Here it's every single day you need to be in and understanding what your consumer is thinking and doing and responding in real time. And again, we didn't have all of those opportunities back when I was starting my career, but now with the explosion of digital and tech and these all new platforms and ways of interacting, you need to be able to do that. So it's less one particular skill. I'd say it's more of just really embracing the real-time nature of work, that there's always new things to be learning and testing and trying and getting out there and doing it.
Great, thank you. Melissa?
I couldn't agree with Zena more. I would just say, there are always going to be new skill sets that we need. So today it might be analytics and digital marketing, and I'm sure it's going to be that way for the next decade, but some new thing will come along that we'll have to know, right? So I think I would really emphasize to just be great at whatever it is that you choose to specialize in, early in your career, whether that's some of the new areas or even some traditional areas. And I agree about rolling your sleeves up and really understanding. I think a great entry-level job would be a community manager, because they are seeing real life, what their consumers are thinking about, what they're asking about, what they think about your products and services, and it really helps you understand things from their perspective. So I hired an IMC grad to do community management. She's on to her next role after a couple of years, but boy, did she learn a lot about what people really think about us and need from us.
Great. Fernando, any more?
Yeah, look, I mean, when I'm talking to people, interviewing people, like, I think it always helps if the person is digitally savvy, you know what I mean? Like, which ties back to what has been said. I always think about, which I think Melissa articulated that, I articulate slightly different. Like, I love when people have something new and something old. You know, like if I were like at early stage of my career, I would try to have a great social media account myself, Twitter, Instagram. I would pick a topic that's a passion point, and I would go to an interview saying like, guys, I mean, I have more followers than your brand, you know, personally, you know what I mean? Like you would be hired like on that interview. And I also try to combine with things that that kind of like, I know they're not going to change, you know, like being good at working with agencies, being good at recognizing a good idea, having knowing a repertoire of traditional work that has drove business and the brand. I would try to combine those two things, you know, like, because I think it helps.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm not sure to whom I should toss this next question. And we have a couple that are in the queue, and I'm going to get to those in just a moment. But you know, Melissa, I'm just sort of, I'm drawing the straw out of the hat here. So you're going to get the first one, but then I'm going to turn it to Fernando and Zena. I know that it has not always been an easy road to get to the position that you enjoy right now. Okay, but it would be helpful to share some of the biggest obstacles that you faced in growing your career, and in particular, even beyond that. You know, I want to hone in on this. I mean, some of those obstacles could have been business challenges. Some of them could have been people that just lacked integrity, or you know, it could have been other influencers or stakeholders that unexpectedly got in the way. But whatever it is, I'd love to hear you share with the attendees, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced getting where you were, and then what did you learn from that?
Maybe I'll go back to, you know, or I don't know if it was 2009, 2009 or 10. I was passed over to be the CCO, and another gentleman got the role, and I really felt like I was ready and able. And I think, you know, I learned so much from that experience, humility, but also, you know, I took initiative and I went to the CEO and I said, you know, what do I need to do to be considered next time, right? And I think, you know, personally, that was probably my biggest personal career challenge, because you work for something, you think you're ready, and somebody else doesn't think you are, right? And the feedback I got from that was super motivating. So, you know, one thing is, you know, you don't always get what you want when you want it. And so to really listen and seek feedback. And then I think just in more of this role, you know, I walked in at a time when the department was kind of doing its own thing. And I firmly believed that I needed the support of all of our business leaders in order to take our identity to the next level. And so, you know, there's a lot of hard work in gaining credibility and in proving what you can do. And I think while I had general support, I needed a lot more than general support. I needed people to throw themselves in with me. And I think, you know, that first year was difficult because I didn't necessarily have all the skill sets, and I had a great team that I learned from, and I had a lot of people outside that I learned from, but it was really putting it all together. So I think, you know, having support and keeping support for what you're trying to achieve in your role is mission critical. You don't do it by yourself. So those are some of my obstacles.
That's great. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Fernando, what about you?
Yeah, I think in my case, it's a natural progression in terms of maturity and personal growth. So in many instances, I think that I was my biggest obstacle. Like, you know what I mean? Like when I started Unilever, I was very impatient. Like I thought that I didn't have to influence people as much, that just doing a good job and it would show and it would be recognized. I was the last trainee to become a manager of a class of 26. You know what I mean? And I was so pissed. Like, I don't know if I can say that here, but like I was so upset. And I was the first one to become a VP out of that same class years later. Because I think I've learned many things, you know, like I've learned that things come at their time. I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't have to fight for them. You have to fight for them, but they are not, as Melissa said, they're not going to unfold in front of you just because you want. And you need to be patient sometimes. And you do need to influence people, and you do need to show your work, and you do need to seek advice, and you do need to like influence, especially in a large organization where sometimes people are not seeing you. So I think that there are things that come with time, you know, like, and you're going to get better over time. And if you think you're great now, I promise you that you'll be much better in the future. That's how it is. And sometimes it's just about being patient and doing the hard work, and, you know, like, and if you believe on what you're doing and you are playing the cards right and influencing people, your time will come. You know, like I was not always the CMO for Burger King or for Restaurant Brands International. Like I was super senior and I was reporting to someone else, and I was patient. I was like working really hard, helping my boss as much as I could. And then one day I became the CMO, and like could argue that took longer or shorter. It doesn't matter, because in the end game, the result was the one that was hoping for. So sometimes you have to be patient.
Perfect. And then Zena, any obstacles in your road to becoming the CMO?
Yeah, yes, a lot. A lot of what Melissa and Fernando mentioned really resonated. I'll maybe take a slightly different tact. I'll say one of the interesting obstacles that I faced was a bit of the culture in tech. And I'll say that in a couple of senses. I think that it's pretty well known that it's not easy to be a woman, to be a minority in this culture and of tech. And I think it's really fascinating, because if you talk to a lot of people there, the overwhelming sort of position is, well, we are absolutely all about meritocracy, and we should never look at anything but people's results. Which again, you think conceptually, absolutely, that's right. But what it fails to discount is you often have a lot of people with very, very similar ways of thinking and ways of operating, and it becomes harder to break through, even though you might have a better idea and a better approach, because it's different than that status quo. And a lot of the people, it becomes really, really hard. So that was difficult. Again, I learned a ton about how to influence, and specifically how to influence engineers when they're the ones who run your company at Google. So there. And then also I think in marketing and working in a company where marketing isn't as valued as it was where I grew up, marketing is important. So many obstacles and things to overcome there, and figuring out, I'd say, how to speak a different language with the engineers that really ran the company, to convince them this is why I need this support. This is why we should invest in doing marketing and doing marketing well. So learned a lot there. But ultimately, and why I came back to CPG is because I wanted to be in a place where I didn't have to constantly fight that battle, but where marketing really had that strategic seat at the table. And I'm really glad to be back in that.
Great, thanks. So each one of you, in one way, shape, or form, referenced other people as part of some of the obstacles that you were facing, and the importance of working with and through other people. And I'm curious, given the roles that each one of you is playing in establishing a vision and then helping to lead that vision coming to life, what steps are you taking to influence and gain support from the entire enterprise around your vision? So let me start this time with Fernando, and I'll shoot it to Zena and Melissa.
So I think that one thing that helps in the case of Restaurant Brands International is that we are very transparent, very open, very informal leadership team. So no one has an office in the office. So we are like facing each other all the time, and I think that foster a very strong collaboration. And I think also the company allows you to push your vision forward. You know, it doesn't, you don't need even to be the CMO or the COO or the CEO. You know, people listen. So in my case, like I have a specific vision in terms of marketing in general, and a specific vision for like in some aspects of like what we should be doing as a company around sustainability, around quality of the food we serve, around doing the right thing for people in diversity and inclusion. And I'm allowed to push those, to pick up those battles, you know, like, and people listen. And some of these things, they took some time. I've been around for 7 years, and some of these things took some time for people to get traction. But that's why you need to be patient, you need to be resilient, and you need to influence. And fortunately, I managed to make progress, and some of these things became priority. Even on the way we do marketing, you know, like on how we push creative, on how we dare to do things that maybe others want, with Burger King, with Popeyes, with Tim Hortons. So it's, to me, it's all about establishing the connection and building your credibility and being able to influence. And here, I mean, it's, every environment is different. Like I think it's harder to do that at Unilever because it's so big and it's a bit more formal. There are more offices. Like you need to schedule a meeting. You know, like here I WhatsApp my boss, the CEO. You know, like, hey, we need to talk about this, and he's willing to jump on the phone whenever. So I find an environment that I enjoy because it's not so formal, it's not so hard for you to push your vision or your passion point forward.
Great. And then, Fernando, before I go to Zena, let me just ask, can you spend a minute, not more than that, just talking about the orchestration and the alignment that's required with, you know, north of a couple thousand franchisees in the system?
Yeah, like I think it's really important, right? I mean, in the end, most of those guys, they own the brand more than we do. You know, they have been with the brand for longer than all of us. Sometimes it goes from it runs through the family, right? I mean, their parents used to be franchisees. So we try to be very close to them. You know, like we have committees for marketing, for development, for image, for tech. We meet with them regularly, and they are a very strong voice. When things work well, like we are in constant contact with them, getting feedback on the stuff that we are doing. It doesn't mean that we will do every single thing that they ask us to do in a way or another, because I think that there needs to be a certain level of trust. Usually, if it's something regarding the operations of the restaurant, you should probably listen to them because they are living the day-to-day there. Maybe it's something related to a TV campaign, less of a say because that's not their thing, but still, there is no harm in listening. And even if you don't do what they're asking you to do, explain why you haven't done that, and hold yourself accountable for the result. So it's a constant collaboration with them too, in all markets.
Great, thank you. Zena?
Yeah, a lot of great advice in there on listening to your stakeholders. I mean, that's I think the key to really selling in a vision. I think what I used to think in the past was, oh, I have to have this spark of brilliance, and here's, you know, this vision. Let me just tell you, everyone, and there would be this, you know, wow, Zena's brilliant, and let's take this vision and run with it. And really, what I've learned is that that management of the stakeholders and you know, understanding not just your consumer but your organization and where you are and where you need to go is really key to selling in a vision. It's a very iterative process, I've found, and if you go into it embracing that that's what it's going to be, I think it's a lot easier. I mean, I'll just say that I do try to balance that, though, and this is something I picked up by being in tech and in the environment of of just always being on and always delivering is testing, learning. I think one of the things that a lot of traditional companies often get caught up in is too much of the analysis paralysis. Like, oh, okay, let's talk to a lot of people and let's align everyone on one single thing. And you can let a lot of interesting trends and being a potential market leader pass you by if you do too much of that. So I try to balance that with, okay, let's also, if we have kind of a spark of an idea, let's find a place that we can test it, just try something with a small group of people, a small brand. Let's just, experiment a bit and prove out that there's something interesting here, or prove out that there's not anything interesting here. And that way you kind of have that real life example that goes a long way in helping to sell in the vision and how you want people to actually interact with it.
Great, thank you. Melissa?
Zena did such a good job. I don't have a lot to add, except I agree with them wholeheartedly. I would just add, create forums. I've seen people, when you're in a corporate environment, you see people go one-on-one and then you like invite the whole world. I think, you should we have something called the Global Marketing Council, which is all of the business heads, and I lead that, and that's where I get input from our business leaders about what we're doing, right? And we came to an understanding where there were some things I was just going to tell them, some things I was going to ask for their input for, and some things I want them to be part of the decision, right? So be clear on decision-making processes in your forums. Then there's the broader marketing community, Abbott's marketers, right? And so we created a forum for them as well. And so in a consensus-oriented organization, which, as Zena mentioned, a lot of traditional companies are, you find your forums, but then you're really clear on what you need from people and really clear on what you're going to deliver for them. And I think clarity is really key, and then they know what to expect.
That's great. Okay, so I want to continue to build on some of the things that you're talking about, because you all highlighted influence and orchestration and leadership when overcoming some of the obstacles in getting to where you are. And it's evidence that, beyond obviously being talented and hardworking, your success is being driven by that type of influence. However, it's also clear that as marketers and as business leaders, we all have to stay up to speed and current with trends and maybe even ahead of them. So there's a couple of questions that are coming in from the class, or from the attendees. One is, what are the resources that you're using to stay up to date on marketing trends? And then related to that, actually, why don't I just shoot through that? So maybe Zena, this time you could start. How are you keeping up to speed on marketing trends?
Sure. I read a lot, so I look at some stuff from the trade rags, Ad Age and Ad Week and the like. But actually, where I think I've learned the most is finding some really great, interesting influencers out there who put out some great content. There's various weekly newsletters and things that come my way that people have super interesting points of view. And I think this is also one of the great benefits of technology helping to spread ideas. It doesn't have to be a formal publication to really understand or to really get a great point of view and understand it from someone. So yeah, reading a lot, and then also just doing and being in these platforms, things like TikTok. Well, okay, I didn't really understand it until I started, playing around with it and being on it and just doing that, even though it's not first nature for me, it's helped a lot to learn.
That's great. Okay, Melissa.
Ditto on Zena's comments. I guess I would add that I'm part of a couple of forums of my peers One is the CMO Growth Council through the ANA, and I love being part of those meetings because we all have common challenges and opportunities, and we're really tackling trends together. So that's one forum that I really enjoy being part of. And then the other thing that I would just add is being a constant student of people and brands you admire, right? And so even if they're way out of your industry or, everyday work, I get the greatest inspiration. I was totally inspired by something I saw on social from United Airlines. What does United have to do with Abbott, right? Nothing. But I was totally inspired about something they did this weekend in social. And we won't do that, but it got me thinking, right? And so the world is, in a way, just a great playground for marketers and at any level, really, to stay on top of things.
Great. And Fernando, how are you keeping up to speed?
Yeah, I spend more time in social media than I should. I read every single thing that gets posted about Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. Everything that's trending. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, LinkedIn, just reading stuff, searching and reading. And I read all the trade stuff, Adweek, Ad Age, Creativity Online, like every day. I look at the top 10. I look at every single thing that's winning awards in terms of creativity and design and advertising. And I try to surround myself with people who are probably much more interesting than I am. And I try to engage with them in conversation and learn from them, both on the agency side and in our marketing team.
Okay, great. So now I'm curious because Melissa, you had talked about this, and I'm going to start with you, but I think this is going to be an important point. You had feedback, from your CEO when you didn't get the Chief Communications Officer role 11 years ago, and what a mistake that was, but what a benefit it is that you doubled down the way that you did. The question is, I think it would be helpful for people to know what are some of the things that you were told that you needed to shore up to put yourself in a position of success like you are right now.
I was the feedback was fairly general, right? The feedback was fairly general, and it was around how I position things, right, as a communicator, and that I was on the road, but I wasn't quite there, and this other person, was beyond me. I took that feedback in two ways. I took it, one, it was general, which meant that it may have been as much a personal choice as it was a professional one. And two, that I took that specific feedback about positioning extremely seriously, and I went to town on it, right? I was studying positioning. I was, I was writing, I was rewriting, I was, ruminating, I was thinking 24/7. And I think that sometimes, especially when, CEOs have a lot on their plates. And so they're often making a bet on a person based on things that they see day to day, not so much on specific skill sets and qualifications. So I hate to say that because we all want to believe that we're super qualified, right? But I do believe that, your executive presence, your ability to articulate your position and strategy is really important. And so, I took so many things away from that conversation, but I worked hard to make sure that I was in a good position next time. And I was, and it was just, a couple of years later. I think that you learn the most from your failures and disappointments, and you can choose, I think attitude is everything. So you can choose to kind of wallow in the self-pity, or you can get at it and be productive.
That's great. So, and I want to pivot here. So in addition to that, I want to get a sense, because you all mentioned how you're staying current with marketing trends, but in particular, there's some interest in how you're staying on top of customer shifts in attitude and behavior and so on and so forth. And I know, Fernando, you mentioned that you read a lot and you're probably on social media more than you should. I'm sure that that's one data point for you about the customer, but I'd love to hear, and this time I think I'm going to start with Melissa, and I'm going to work around again to Fernando and Zena. What are you doing to stay on top of customer shifts in behavior, in trend, in attitude, and how do you prioritize those?
So for Abbott, we have many, many different kinds of customers, right? We have hospital customers, consumers who are buying our consumer products, and then, people who are prescribed our devices, et cetera. So we have a lot of different customers. I would say first, marketers need to have a handle on the general external societal environment. And boy, did we get a lot of that this past year. So number one is what is happening generationally, what is happening in society. And I think understanding that, then you go into your specific markets, right? And so we have competitive intelligence that we do, where we're looking at competitors. We do a lot of surveying of our customers and potential customers. We're listening in social, and social listening is huge in terms of the kind of feedback we get. And then I would say I rely on our teams, right, that are in the businesses to help us understand. There's a lot of market research, though, that goes on in addition to the social listening.
Okay, great. Fernando?
Yeah, I think that we try to do similar things than what Melissa described. I would say that it's never enough. Like I wish I had more hours to spend more time sitting in a restaurant, or like looking how people do things on a drive-through, listening to the drive-through, reading complaints, like from our 1-800 number or from the website. I don't think it's ever enough. And I think that's probably one of the things that we can clearly do better here at RBI. You know what I mean? Like we are swamped with data, and sometimes we don't have time to craft the insight. Like we have a lot of first-party data, we have a lot of research, but we can do better spending time with people and understanding people, which is how Melissa started her description. And in Unilever, I used to do more of that. Like we used to follow consumers to the supermarket with their consent. I was not stalking anyone, and see like the pantry and look at how they would explain to us how they play with the product, how they use the products and all that. So that's something that we can do more here. Maybe I became a bit like disconnected because of the position, which is not a good thing. Like I really enjoy when I can go and work 2-3 days in a restaurant, like, and just see and just watch, like, and prepare the products and learn about how the design that you created in the office, like, has an implication for the restaurant. So it's never enough to spend time with the consumers beyond the research, which I think we all probably do.
Terrific. Zena?
Yeah, I would echo all of the above. I think one of my favorite things that I really love doing is ethnographic research. So where you actually go and spend time in a consumer's home and understand more than just how do they use your product, but what's going on in their lives. It's actually one of the things I've missed the most about COVID times, because we haven't been doing that, obviously. There's other ways, and we've tried to do do it a bit more with various apps and you know, people on their mobile phones walking us around their house and whatnot. Not quite the same, but I think just getting to that individual and human sort of face to all the data that you get is key to balancing that out. Because yes, it's just one person, one example, but like Fernando said, I really believe that that's where you can find some really great insight, and you know, things that you might not necessarily even know to look for come up if you're watching and you're listening.
Okay, great. So I'm curious, and I have a couple of questions that are emerging from this conversation. I'm curious, number one, if you can just share with the group fairly quickly, when you first got the role of Chief Marketing or Communications Officer, what did you do to ensure you succeeded? So you worked hard all your career, you're now in the role, and now you realize all the accountability is with me. Fernando?
So I think in my case, when I became head of marketing for Burger King, which was my first job when I moved to Miami, I think that the first thing I tried to do, the first things I did was like first trying to get the fundamentals of the brand right. You know what I mean? The positioning of the brand, make sure people understood that, values and personality, all that. Make sure that we revamp the design of the brand because it was very dated and became a bit generic. So I went like fundamental by fundamental of marketing on the brand. And in parallel to that, because it was like a brand new industry for me, right? I mean, coming from consumer goods and moving to QSR, because it was a complete different ecosystem, right? I mean, like with franchisees and people who didn't know me from before. Unilever was a comfort zone. I was there for 18 years. I knew how to do things. It was never a comfort zone because I was moving around quite a bit, but I knew how to get things done. Here it wasn't. So in the beginning, instead of recruiting everyone I knew in marketing, and bring it here, I didn't bring anyone really, because I thought I could learn more from them than if I brought someone who knew what I knew too, you know. So I tried to coach the team and give, like, coach the team, teaching a bit of marketing. There are lots of people who are not marketeers in marketing roles, and learn from them in terms of the QSR, influencing franchisees and operations and all that good stuff. So it was like trying to get the fundamentals of the brand right, at the same time building my credibility and the team and building trust with people and learning from the industry. But so it's a very specific case because I didn't become CMO in a place that I was already working on.
Mm-hmm. All right, Zena, jump right into a new company and you're in charge. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Fernando's experience, I came into this role and into the company at the same time. And to make it even more interesting, I started during COVID. So I have yet to meet any of my team in person, which is very surreal. I think the key, though, is doing a pretty strong, I call it a listening tour. So, you know, meeting with various constituents, both, you know, up, down, across the organization, and trying to suss out, all right, what should the top priorities be? And I'd say it's what's made me successful so far. I don't know if I can say that I'm successful yet. I'm still early on, but what's made me successful is balancing the kind of shorter term and the longer term. So there's some needs that everyone clearly stated. This is what we need help with, and this isn't working today. So hear that, and those are some things to fix with a quick win. But I think actually the most transformative things are the things words that people didn't even know to say because they're kind of operating with their own sorts of given experiences. And part of the reason why they brought me in was because they wanted to see someone to come that has had completely different experiences. So kind of telling people that it's not just about going on this track faster or more smoothly, it might be going to a totally different track. So some of those things take a little bit more time to seed, and the influence that we've been talking about all night is critical there. So you can kind of get some quicker wins by listening and doing some of the immediate things, but I think it's also really important to have a mindset and an eye for what's going to get you to where you want to go longer term, and building the influence amongst the org to get there.
Beautiful. And Melissa, you've been with Abbott for roughly 25 years. There could not have been anyone more prepared to take on the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer role than you, given all your breadth of understanding there. So once you got to the role, what did you do to make sure that you hit the ground running and you made the type of impact that somebody as prepared as you would have?
I did exactly what Zena did. Coming new to a company, I met with a lot of different people and listened, right? I met with team members who were my peers. I met with the business leaders around the company, and I asked them about, we experienced the same things, but what was it like from their position, right? And what do they think about the group and where we have to go? I had my own opinions and ideas, but it was illuminating, especially for my team, right? And so once you have those insights, you can apply them to your plan. The second thing I did was I'm a big believer in people want to accomplish something in their work. None of us come here just to check in on a clock and leave and go home. We're all trying to accomplish something. So really having, whether you call it an ambition, a vision, and then, building the roadmap on how to get there. That was probably in the first 6 months, we did that. And then the other thing I highly recommend for people is I had a mini board, what I call my mini board of directors, which are just a handful of people, 4 people that I had met along the way that I really admired, that were either in agencies, really high level roles, no other CMOs actually, but who knew a lot about marketing and creative, because I didn't. And I would spend a little time with each of them quarterly, especially that first year and a half or so, just almost as sanity checks on what I was doing. And they're people I really admire and respect, and they've been invaluable to me when I didn't, have a lot of peer CMOs that I knew at the time. I do now, which is great, but I didn't at the time.
Marvelous. Okay. So now I'd like to go, this is a 2-part question, actually a 3-part question. Ready? And this is a little quicker in framing this, and I'd love your perspective on this. So I'm going to start, Zena, with you. What in the year that you've been in this role, and you can even go beyond that, before you got there, what are you most proud of as the leader of the organization? The second part of that is this something that your president or CEO would agree with? And if not, what would your president say is the thing that he or she is most proud of you accomplishing?
Yeah, I'd say I'm most proud of getting the org to start to think in a new way. I mentioned the kind of hands-on keyboard marketers and changing kind of how we work. And the fact that data and consumer insights need to be at the core of everything we do. So I think introducing that has been the thing I'm most proud of, and I think the CEO would say that as well. Probably the thing that I'm most excited about, though, is actually getting, as I mentioned, a few of those like pilots off the ground to work with some new partners and again do things in new ways that they're pretty different for us and radical in some senses. Some people in the org still aren't convinced, but I'm happy that we at least got these off the ground so that we can start to learn.
Okay. Melissa?
I think I would say the work we did last year for COVID. Abbott developed 11 different COVID tests for many different instruments around the world, and I think we were in lockstep with the business and communicating to a variety of different stakeholders. We were able to kind of turn on a dime and do some new advertising around that. And yesterday we were just named to Fortune Most Admired Top 50 companies. So I think, that work, helped us achieve that as an organization. And I believe that my boss, our CEO, would agree.
Okay, great. And Fernando?
I think like I've been here for 7 years, so I have a good list of things that I'm very proud of. If I were to pick one, I would say the level of collaboration that we have in our marketing team across the globe with our agencies and with the marketing guys who sometimes are not even the same company, right? Because in most countries we have a master franchisee that has a marketing team, and it doesn't feel that way. It's really like one team, and the ambition that they all have creatively, it's amazing. I don't see that in any other company, to be honest. We are a machine of bringing great ideas that are on brand to the table, and I'm super proud of that. I think that my CEO would probably say something different. He would probably say something around the progress that we made in terms of sustainability, including the quality of the food, planet sustainability, and the people side of sustainability, which has to do with D&I. I'm very involved with those three things. He would probably pick that, which I'm also very proud of. You know what I mean? Like, I think we made massive strides on those fronts. It's just that he doesn't see the day-to-day and how those people collaborate in the marketing team. And I come from a place in Unilever which had a good level of collaboration, but it's not even close to the level of collaboration that we have among the marketing teams and the agencies all across the globe. And I'm super proud of that.
It's interesting as I'm listening to each one of you cited something that basically is building the foundation even stronger for sustained success. It wasn't a market share gain. It wasn't a sales result or a profit result or a share price or anything like that. It was making sure that the enterprise was better in the long run. And I think it's a fantastic perspective. Of course, if you don't meet the numbers, some of those things don't necessarily come to fruition. I have a corresponding question though to you, which is, in your career, not just as the leader, but in your career, what was the biggest mistake you've made? That if you could do it again, regardless of whether or not you learned from it, if you could do it again, you would do it again differently. I think, Melissa, why don't we start with you on this one?
I would say, I don't know if there's one big mistake that stands out. There are dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of little mistakes that stand out. And I think my biggest mistakes came when I was naive, or when I wasn't anticipating and thinking ahead. There have been a number of surprises from time to time, especially in my comms role, where we're a healthcare company. We're under attack from time to time, and it came out of left field, but maybe it didn't really come out of left field. Maybe we could have recognized that and identified it. And I think, I go to bed every night worried about what could happen overnight in some country around the world that will completely change my day tomorrow. And I think with social media, I might be speaking for my colleagues here, the issues that you have to deal with in not just the CCO role, but the CMO role are pretty significant, and staying ahead of it. So I always kind of get angry at myself when I've missed something.
Fernando?
Yeah, like I confess that I did this mistake that I'm going to describe probably more than once, which is like when things are going too well, you try to expand the brand too far. And every time you do that and you try to conquer like new users or new consumers or new guests, which is the way we speak here, you end up like losing the core ones faster than you can capture the new ones. So in Unilever, I launched like a premium range for Vaseline that made me change the focus from the core to this new range, which was more premium. Very tempting because the premium skincare market is much more, you can make much more money there. But I lost my core users faster than I was capturing new ones. And there were other occasions where I probably did that like 2 or 3 times. And hopefully now, knock on wood, I'm not going to do that again. It's a mistake that tends to happen when things are going really well. And you get like too confident and you try to push too much. And you always tend to lose more the core. And people tend to give more love, especially in consumer goods, to new stuff, the innovation rather than the core. And the core is what moves the business. So if you give love to the core and you do it well, you find the right insight, the right way to talk about it, or you innovate on the core, chances are that you're going to drive a much more powerful business return than the new thing that you can do to expand the brand.
Okay. Zena?
Yeah, as Melissa said, there have been a lot of things, many mistakes made along the way. Maybe I'll talk a bit about a personal one. Some years ago, when I was still at Google, I had the opportunity to go to a smaller startup to be their CMO, and I decided not to do it. I said, I'm just not sure about this. I love the company and love the people, but I thought, leaving Google, which is this amazing company, I've got this great role, I'm not so sure, so I'm gonna pass on it. And the company is very, very successful. It's I won't tell you which one, but it's they've done really, really well, and I think back on it as, the advice I give a lot of people is to, go where the growth is and take risks on yourself. And I didn't do that with myself at that point. And I wouldn't go so far as to call it a mistake or regret. I'm very happy with where I am in my career and life. But I think back like, oh man, if I had taken that risk on myself and gone where there was a lot of growth, I think I would have learned even more than where I am today.
That's great. And it's interesting because you all have some very important answers. I mean, the first thing that came to mind in my career, and it's pages and pages and pages of mistakes, but the first one that came to mind was Ranchero Bagel. There could have been nothing as unappealing as that product, and we put that on the menu for a bit, and that was just terrible. But I'll stop right there. So I'm curious if it would be helpful to go around the horn here. It'd be helpful to go around the horn and just ask if you had anything with what you know today that you could offer to the participants who are aspiring to be in your positions. Okay, what couple of points of advice or guidance would you give them for a very successful career and hopefully in the types of roles that you're enjoying right now? So Zena, I'll start with you.
Sure. I'd say think about a few key things for whatever role you are in. Think about, am I learning something new? Am I getting support from my management? And am I enjoying my team, like, peers of yours and cross-functional partners that you're working with? And, I found that in my career, at least, when I didn't have at least two of those really solid and great, I wasn't happy. I also found that I wouldn't be delivering as impactful results as the places when I've had all three. So I just encourage everyone. I think, especially as you've heard compared to the other folks on the panel, I've had a lot more diverse experiences across very different companies, and I feel like I learned a lot in those. So I'm a big advocate for looking and seeing what do you want to learn, finding a supportive and enjoyable place to do it, even if that means going to another company, going to another place.
That's great. And Zena, really quick for you, how are you finding time to continue to learn in your current role?
It's not easy, but again, I think that as Fernando was saying, social media, lots of places you can grab quick minutes. So if I'm waiting to pick up my son at daycare, I can kind of scroll through and see, oh, this is an interesting thought. This is that. It's less about I need to devote an hour to sit with a tome of a novel or a book. I think getting it in snackable content, which is all over the place now, is key, and that way you can do it when you have a minute.
Great, thank you. Melissa?
I love what Zena said about learning. I mean, it's always about, are you learning or are you stale? I guess I would also say, don't stay in your lane. And I think you always need to be contributing. So I would always look at it as, am I achieving something? Am I contributing or achieving something that makes a difference here or has an impact, right? Whether it has a direct sales impact or an impact for a customer, or someone that's important to your business. And then on the don't stay in your lane, what that really means is, if you're just, I hear people say this all the time, well, that's not my job, or that's somebody else's role and I don't want to step on their toes. Well, there are ways to veer out of your lane without causing relationship issues. And part of that is just honest curiosity and learning. And I don't know of anyone that's going to say no if you ask to say, hey, can I be on that project? I'd like to help out, or hey, I'd like to shadow you for a couple days and learn more about what your function is and what you do. So those are a couple of thoughts.
Terrific. And Fernando, advising a young
Yeah.
Fernando.
Look, I think it was like really good advice, I also think it helps if you know what you really like, you know what I mean? Like, and how to develop your superpower, which can be used in different functions, I always personally really like creativity and design. So I always invested a disproportionate amount of time learning about that. And pairing and learning from people and pairing with people, talking to people, watching stuff, and I always felt it was fun because I love it. So it didn't feel, I remember leaving as a trainee, leaving the office and going to a friend's house to watch the VHS tape of the ads that won awards in a given year. Back then it was not as easy as going to a website. I'm old. So like we'd buy some beers and watch ads and we loved it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I developed my criteria, and you can use that creativity, whether you are working in finance, operations, develop, it doesn't really matter. But that became kind of like what I wanted to be my superpower, and I had fun with it. So the sooner you know what that is, the sooner you can build a differentiation for you, like you as a brand. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to be really unique at? I think, sure, like you can you can have a good knowledge of many things because marketing does require for you to have lots of disciplines. But if your passion is analytics, go all in. You know, if your passion is social media, go all in on that because it will help create a distinctive marketeer in you.
Yeah, there's some nuggets of gold in each one of your answers, but at the root of it, the themes that keep popping out are learning, like constantly learning, taking some risk. And, you know, the way that you say this, Melissa, about staying, not being afraid to go out of your lane is particularly important. And Fernando, one thing that marketers typically don't do very well is they don't market themselves. And I'm not talking about in a selfish way, but just thinking about themselves as a brand in the same way that they would think about their companies and the various revenue components as brands. And you add this together, I mean, there's some great points of foundation here to be able to have a very, very successful career. So, you know, we're at the end of our panel tonight. I want to just do a couple of things here. Number one, to say thank you to everybody who's on the phone. Obviously, Zena and Melissa and Fernando, you guys are fantastic, remarkably successful in your careers. And this is not a you've been, this is a you're continuing to do it. And it's really, it's marvelous to be able to witness it. And in some cases for me to be a part of it, as I am right now with Fernando. Second, I just want to thank everybody, all the attendees for participating. This is a really important part of Medill to get exposure to the people that are making things happen and setting trends as the three of our panelists are tonight. So looking forward to keeping the dialogue going. I hope everybody has a marvelous Groundhog's Day or evening at this point. And Fernando, I know I can speak for everybody that's on the call. Wish you the best of luck on Thursday.
Thank you. We are super excited about it. It's our baby girl that's coming.
Rightfully so. All right, everybody. Thank you. Good night, and all the best.